Welcome everyone here in person and online. This is the Ventura County Climate Emergency Council regular meeting scheduled for Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023 at 12 p.m. We're starting just a little later at 12:05. We are broadcasting from the Atlantic Conference Room here in the Hall of Administration. And as you can see, we have not hit quorum yet. We were waiting to see if we had at least one more person join us. So with that, we'll go ahead and start the meeting and call the meeting to order. So could we have a roll call, please?
Vice Chair White.
Here.
Councilmember Sayed.
Here.
Chair Munoz Snell.
Here.
Councilmember Ventura. He let me know he will be absent. Councilmember Wayne Rostro. Present. Councilmember Dora Harrella. Councilmember Keith Gorola. He let me know he will not be here. Councilmember Para. Councilmember Camarillo. And Councilmember Crow.
Here.
Thank you. So we move on to item number 3, Pledge of Allegiance. And Councilmember Buenrostro, do you want to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. And just to let everybody know that Councilmember Buenrostro is leaving us. Today is her last meeting date. And yeah, okay. So thank you so much. So let's move on to item number 4, which is the approval of the minutes. But because we don't have a quorum, we can't approve the minutes. So we'll just move them to the next meeting to approve. And then we are at item number 5, which is public comments for items not on the agenda. So this is when we carve out some time for those that are here in the meeting room, as well as those online, that if you have a public comment to make, and they are the items not listed on today's agenda, you can go ahead and raise your hands. Is anybody here in the audience needing to make a public comment? No? All right, so let's go online. And if you have a comment to make, go ahead and take yourself off of mute and or raise your hand. So we're scrolling through right now for all those online. I don't see anybody who would like to make a public comment. No. Okay. So then let's move on through the agenda. There were no items on the correspondence agenda, so we are at the regular agenda, and we do have a couple of reports. So let's start with item number 7, to receive an update from the County Executive Office staff.
Yes, we included quite a bit of updates in this month's member packet, but one of the exciting updates is 3C Ren's business plan approval for the years. It's an 8-year plan from 2024 to 2031. And basically 3C Ren will be getting $155 million, and it's to continue their 3 existing programs, which is the Energy Code Connect, building performance training, and the single family home energy savings and multifamily home energy savings. And then they're going to expand to 3 new programs, which include technical support for the ag sector, energy efficiency for small and medium-sized businesses and leased or rented facilities, and help identifying energy savings and resilient opportunities for commercial and public sector buildings. That's called the Energy Assurance Program. Santa Barbara first launched the Energy Assurance Program last year, and they're expanding it to it was a pilot project, and they're expanding it to the counties of Ventura and SLO. So that's an exciting opportunity, and we're using 3C Ren's resources. I noted this further in the agenda packet, but we're using the Energy Assurance Program to look at climate resilient planning grant opportunities. There's 3 that are open right now, and we're working with partners like Clean Power Alliance, 3C Ren, Community Environmental Council, and counties of Ventura, Santa Barbara, and SLO on these grant opportunities. So there'll be more updates next month on where we're at with those grant applications. But basically, we're looking at resilient centers throughout the county. So it's not just in unincorporated areas. And also there's a huge community engagement portion and funding our community partners, especially environmental justice organizations like Central Coast Climate Justice Network. Okay, we have a new clean transportation communications intern that'll help with our social media and newsletters. I'm not the best at social media, and her name is Kendall James. She is a recent UCSB graduate, and she will be developing some flyers that we'll send out shortly for our National Drive Electric Week events, as well as our Clean Air Day events. Unfortunately, our awesome EV coach that y'all met last month, Nancy took a job with our EV Blueprint partner, MyCop, which is awesome for her. It's a great opportunity. She's helping with their grants, and so she liked all the work that she did on our electric vehicle grant applications, and she wanted to do that full time. So she started a couple weeks ago with MyCop, and so now we have an open EV coach position. There is a link to the job announcement in the member packet, and applications are due by 5 p.m. tomorrow. I think so far we have 11 applicants, and they all look great. So we will be evaluating them and holding interviews, and by the next meeting, we will have a new EV coach. National Drive Electric Week events. The county is partnering with EV Advocates of Ventura County APCD, Central Coast Clean Cities Coalition, they're also called C5, and Electric Drive 805. And we're participating in several events throughout the tri-counties, but the ones that are specific to Ventura is Banana Festival. That's on September 30th from 10 to 6. We will have a table there along with Community Environmental Council and EV Advocates, and they're going to have a couple of demonstration or EVs that members of the public can look in and sit in. Unfortunately, it won't be a ride and drive opportunity for the Banana Festival just because of spacing issues. The next opportunity to check out EVs will be at the Ventura County EV Showcase. It's at the Ventura Harbor the very next day. So that's Sunday, October 1st from 12:30 to 4:30. We're also planning an online webinar for EVs for Everyone program in Spanish and in English, and it'll talk about EV purchase guidance. And then we are working with our Ventura County libraries, specifically Fillmore, Ojai, Oak Park, and Oxnard, to host additional EV purchase guidance presentations and EV McNeely children's activities. If y'all remember, we have a little EV cartoon character. She's super cute. Well, her pronouns are they, them, so binary. And the kids love coloring her. We have stickers, we have temporary tattoos. There's also magnets. And we have EV McNeely build kits. And so we'll work with the libraries to have the older children or older youth at the libraries can get in groups and build EV McNeelys. So that's a fun activity. We've done previous library events. Morel hosted a whole series earlier this year, and quite a few adults and children showed up for the kids activities and the EV presentations. So there's also some presentations on green business. We have an update later, but if you want to just.
Yeah, so there were also presentations on getting green business certified, or what you can do in your own home to reduce your waste and energy consumption, as well as home weatherization from one of our coworkers, Javier Salcedos, who does a lot of presentations at community centers and libraries. So people got to learn as well on upgrades they can do in their own home to reduce energy demand. Just it's all have more of a comfortable feel.
And then the library grant funding also provided some energy efficiency upgrades for 3 of our libraries.
Yes, so so we applied for the Sustainable California Libraries Grant with Ventura County Libraries, and that helped with 3 libraries at Piru, Satacoy, and El Rio. They're in Albuquerque Solis Library to get them green business certified. So we got $30,000 in funding. A portion of that was used for energy upgrades, so switching them over to LED lights, giving them this water dispenser for them to reduce their plastic use, single water bottle plastic usage, giving them these like cleaning kits so that they use cleaning products that are more sustainable instead of using single-use paper towels, they're using rags. And so that was a portion of those funds. Another portion was for those presentations and also for kid activities. So we did story times where kids were reading about, or they got books read about how to be ocean protectors, about EVs themselves, that's being replicated with the presentations happening for National Drive Electric Week, and also about recycling. So engaged a whole wide range of audience from adults to kids and teenagers as well.
I eventually want to apply for a grant to get a big wheelie, what are they called?
Inflatable or something?
Mascot.
Okay. Now, were those presentations and that information shared in Spanish as well, or?
Yes,
Yeah,
so
good.
we had it both in Spanish and English. We had interpretation devices for if we had to do it both, or just depending if there were more Spanish, if all of them were Spanish speakers, then we just presented in Spanish.
Okay, very good, thank you.
And we're hoping our new EV coach will also be bilingual. So, if not, we do have staff, lots of bilingual staff on our sustainability division team. Next, we have an update on the CARB Zero Emission Equipment Roadshow Program.
Yeah, so recently, so on Saturday, July 29th, we participated in a event hosted by the American Green Zone Alliance, or AGZA. They partner with CARB to set up these events to allow individuals or members of the public to come try out electric equipment, large and small, or electric landscape equipment. So there was a variety of vendors there that had some ride lawnmowers as well as some handheld equipment there, because there's funding available through a core program. And that's for small businesses or sole proprietors of landscapers, so to give them the opportunity to test out the equipment before deciding to make the transition over. It was a successful event. It was held at El Rio Plaza Elementary School. And at that event, we also were notified of another program that AGZA is taking the lead on in partnership with CARB. It's called the Zero Emission Equipment Roadshow Program. And so they gave us the opportunity to test out equipment if we'd like to. They have a trailer that they drop off to various businesses who sign up for the program, let them test out the equipment. I believe they said it was about 14 pieces of equipment on this trailer, and they give them 14 days to try it out as well. So that's something we learned about. The information of the contact of the person who's in charge of that program is on there. Her name is Esther Wu. Her email is on there. So, you know, anybody that's interested in testing out some electric equipment, this program is going to run through, I believe they said May of next year. Initially, it was supposed to end this year, but they got an extension. So we'll be promoting that as well to see if any individuals within the county are interested in participating in that.
The annual Central Coast Sustainability Summit is coming up in October. Our county staff is on the planning committee, and this used to be an annual summit that was more focused on Santa Barbara, but they've expanded it to Ventura and so counties over the past couple of years. And it's a great all-day event. I think it costs $15 to register. The registration information was included in your packet, and it's all day on that Wednesday. And the theme will be decarbonization, or decarbonizing to meet the climate challenge. And we'll have breakout sessions that will relate or discuss existing building electrification, transportation decarbonization, waste management, climate, food, and community resilience and collaboration. It's a great event where some of the presentations are a little bit technical, but most of them are pretty broad and a good overview of the different topics, and they always have great speakers. I know our staff attended last year. You were not, okay. So I invite you all to register. If you have any questions, please send me an email.
And because it's open to a broad range of people, the Brown Act doesn't apply to us, so that whatever the number it is that this council wants to attend, you make your own, reservations and attend.
I think there'll be Devin Best will be okay, y'all are part of that. One of their colleagues will be on a panel and presenting. Sure. No.
Hey Heather, I have a question. Yeah, it's so great to hear of the $155 million coming to the Tri-Counties under the 3C REN program. My question is, will the staff and the programs that follow that funding be able to coordinate distribution of Inflation Reduction Act money from the federal government?
So the money that goes to 3C REN is ratepayer funds. So we pay a portion of that when we pay our utility bills, and it's from the California Public Utilities Commission. So it's not really associated with Inflation Reduction Act funds, but we have been tracking all the funding opportunities and applying. A lot of times we'll partner because these applications are a lot of work. So we'll partner with regional, some of our cities, community-based organizations, or even partners in the Tri-County areas. But we have been tracking funding and looking for all opportunities.
And so do you envision that county staff will have the ability to help distribute Inflation Reduction Act money?
To my knowledge, I don't know. I haven't heard anything about that. I asked Alejandra, she's out of the office currently, but she also didn't have any information on that. She hadn't.
That sounds like no. Well, so that's the thing that's going to the board on September 12th, right? If the board approves the program, that would direct staff to do that, to be in a position to help distribute Inflation Reduction Act money or
I will have to follow up on that because I do not know anything about that. So I'll follow up and talk to our CEO staff and then send an email out with more information.
Okay, well, it's coming up at the board in a couple of weeks.
Right, but that information hasn't been shared with me.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. We're working on the agenda for that for you right now because the VCCEC proposals are on that agenda.
Yes.
I'll just jump to that update. We have a time certain at 11:30. And the hearings in the Board of Supervisors hearing room. And it'll be for the two proposals. One is for electrification and decarbonization of county-owned facilities and buildings. And then the other one is for the residential and non-residential outreach.
I'll be there.
Yes. And the council members are more than welcome to attend and make public comment. If you need more information, just follow up with me and I can tell you all about the logistics, etc. The packet will be available the Thursday before the hearing, so I don't have a calendar right on me, so I don't know, around the 9th or so, but I'll let y'all all know. Okay, I believe the last update is we submitted our REACH grant. That's the Reliable, Equitable, Accessible Charging for Multifamily Housing. That was a joint partnership with UCSB, some of the cities, and 3C Ren, and community-based organizations in the Tri-County region. And our application was to the Energy Commission, and it was to install 225 charging stations at 67 multifamily housing sites across 3 counties. We had 49 stations at 17 multifamily facilities in Ventura County. It's mostly private multifamily housing. Some of the sites are public sites that are adjacent to multifamily housing. One of our hardest outreach efforts has been for multifamily housing to get charging stations installed at these sites. Just, it's hard to find the owner or the manager, and because it always affects charging or parking spaces when you install charging stations. And so that's kind of one of the sticking points is everyone always wants lots of parking. So, but hopefully we're successful. We tried our best to put in a great grant application, and we'll know later this year if we get funding for that. Okay. And that's all.
Okay,
Does anyone have any questions?
any questions from the council?
Oh, I think,
There.
sorry, I had one more
Oh,
update for
sure.
the climate pollution reduction grant program. No worries. So I believe at the last meeting, we said that we're still waiting to hear back from EPA, but we did receive notification that we did receive the awards for the planning grant. So that's $1 million for creating a regional climate action plan for the Oxnard, Thousand Oaks, and Ventura MSA. So we're making that a regional effort so that all the cities within Ventura County can utilize that regional plan for themselves. So currently we're working on the first deliverable being creating a priority climate action plan. We put out an RFI, which was due on August 11th. We received 4 applications and are currently in the review process to select a consultant to help us with the greenhouse gas inventory element, as well as a low income and disadvantaged communities benefits analysis, among other elements within that plan. So we will also be holding a meeting tomorrow with our partnering cities who had submitted a letter of support to us during the application period, but we'll also be inviting any of the other cities or agencies that may not have had the chance to submit that letter of support.
Wonderful. All right, so,
So the inventory gonna be countywide then?
So it depends on what the consultant is willing to do. So we did express that we would like it to be countywide, but because for this first deliverable, it's due March 1st. So it's a very short timeline. So it's depending on the capacity of the consultant, and if they have expressed in their proposal that they are able to do so, then we invite that.
Great.
okay.
Whereas
thank you.
what, the greenhouse
What-
gas inventory, this is.
What we have,
unincorporated?
what we've seen is just the unincorporated part of the county,
Oh,
doesn't include the cities.
oh.
We have a climate on the move document that is old, and the inventory was a regional inventory, but the protocols are old and it needs to be updated. So we have, I feel like it was done in 2014. So, but there's other opportunities. So besides the PCAP, there's the CCAP.
Yeah. So the climate pollution reduction grant, it's a 2-phase program. We're currently in the planning phase. That's where we receive the planning grant funds. And the 3 deliverables, the first being the priority climate action plan. The second deliverable is going to be a comprehensive climate action plan. So it gives us the opportunity to expand that priority plan. And that one is going to be due 2 years from this summer. We received notice on August 1st. So it'll be 2 years from that date that comprehensive plan will do, and then it will be due. And the final deliverable is just gonna be a status update or status report on our progress on our plan. And that'll be due at the end of the grant term, which will be 4 years.
So the PCAP has a really quick turnaround time, and it's working with a consultant, we will see what we can get done by March.
Okay, very good. And so, yes, Councilmember
I
Crowe.
guess just random thought, it seems like it should be pretty easy if we've already got a greenhouse inventory for the county to be able to combine that with just the cities. It seems like
So
it should be
we will wanna update it though, because that one is from 2015 baseline. And so EPA is giving us the option to, they're not limiting us and being able to choose what year we wanna grab data from. So, again, working with the consultant, we'll be able to make that decision on when we feel would be the best year to use data from, especially with COVID being 2020, that will affect some of the emissions projections or,
I guess ideally, we can get an updated inventory. Worst case, we
Right.
could still combine it with the existing.
Yes.
To meet, a timeline.
yes.
And then I guess my last question would be is, the county's got a climate action plan. Or are they gonna use that as a basis for the
So-
cities or? how
So
does
the
that-
idea for this regional one is, the county along with a couple other cities do have already their own climate action plan. The idea is to pull some of the elements that we feel are gonna be relevant for all the cities, and include that. So the regional one will serve as kind of an expansion to some of the existing ones and also just be also, like if any of the cities wanna adopt that as their climate action plan as opposed to making that their own. Kind of make it comprehensive for all the cities. So it won't negate our climate action plan, it'll only help it. And the purpose of this was also with having this priority climate action plan, we'll be able to apply for implementation funds through this program to help continue implementing some of the programs that are in our climate action plan as well.
Gotcha. Great, thanks.
So
Okay.
there'll be a lot more information coming after we start meeting with our advisory group.
Yes.
All right, so any public comments on this item? No one here in the audience and anyone online? All right,
I have one more question.
yes, go ahead,
So
Councilman.
sorry. One
No,
of the
no.
grants I guess you guys are investigating, what is a resilience center?
Well, we are gonna be working with our community partners and, community groups to figure out what the definition is for a resilience center. It's very broad, that's why we want public input, but a lot of times, for example, we're looking at some of our libraries and adding, HVAC systems, solar, battery storage, energy efficiency upgrades. We would like the resiliency centers to be a place that people would like to go. But it could also have, 'cause sometimes just a big open gym with cots and stuff isn't welcoming to everyone. So, we'd like public input on what these resiliency centers would look like, and it's gonna be a big planning effort, so I don't have a lot of information right now. Hopefully we'll get funding.
Gotcha.
So they could be used as both emergency, but then ongoing, just sustainability and maybe being a showcase for.
Yes, it'd be a place where people could get information. Right now, the libraries have a library of things where people can go check out our water efficiency and energy efficiency toolkits, but maybe they could check out batteries, storage equipment, so they could, in case of power safety shut-off events, they could run whatever medical equipment they need, or yeah, so lots of possibilities.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this is all wonderful to hear all this stuff going on in the county. I'm so impressed with what you guys are doing.
Yes, it's a lot of grant tracking.
It's great.
Much coordination.
We have great partners though, so Clean Power Alliance is really helping pull together. They have a Power Ready program that they're expanding. They already work with their county, or sorry, they already work with their member agencies on identifying facilities that they can add battery storage and solar to in case of PSPS events. And so this is just looking at potentially community spaces as well as public spaces to create these resiliency centers. So we're happy that Clean Power Alliance is providing a lot of staff support on some of these grant applications. And we also have a great community partner with Community Environmental Council. They help a lot with engagement.
Oh, very good. Right, thanks. So let's move on to item number 8, receiving an update on the Ventura County Electrified Transportation Initiatives.
We just provided a lot of information in the board packet, mainly to follow up on some of the information we provided last month. We wanted to highlight that we have our Drive Clean newsletter. The next newsletter will be coming out in September. And then we also have our transportation electrification webpage that we try to keep updated with incentive opportunities. There's some information in here about our EV and charging infrastructure projects. We're working with Charge Ready, and we'll hopefully be going to the board in September or early October with some program agreements to install charging stations, public charging stations at what is it, 15 additional sites. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes. But just to remind everyone, we went late last year and early this year to ask the board for funding to participate in the Charge Ready program, and then we just needed a little bit of additional funding to install 69 additional EV charging ports for fleet, and then fleet will also be purchasing 69 electric vehicles to go along with those charging ports. They like to do a 1 port, 1 car expansion. And we also at that time got funding for 20 additional public chargers. And again, that was funded through the SCE Charge Ready program and a general fund contribution. And then next is, we have additional, so here's the number that I was looking for earlier, 27 public chargers at 9 county facilities. And we're working with SCE's Charge Ready program right now on our project agreements that'll be going to the board hopefully in September or early October to get those project agreements signed to install additional charging infrastructure. It's kind of I wish the process was a little faster, but I think the program just has a lot of participation and it's just slow to get through the program agreement and all the ducks in a row for actually charging or installing the charging stations, but we're working on it.
What do you need board approval for?
To sign the agreement, as a staff, I'm not allowed to sign an agreement with SCE. So to participate in their program, SCE contributes, there's 2 different programs. There's customer and customer built and SCE built. Our fleet charging infrastructure is mostly going through the SCE built program, and our public chargers are mostly going through customer built, and that's because of cost effectiveness. It's more expensive to put in public charging infrastructure than in fleet because of the ADA requirements, and I guess a lot of our parking lots are not level. And so yeah, so those 2 programs, and for the customer built, SCE contributes 80% of what they determine the construction costs. Sorry, they contribute up to 80% of what they determine the construction costs to be. And we're not aware of their formula, so they just give us a number. And then to make up that difference, we've been applying for grants or other incentives, and then sometimes we request general fund. So we kind of, every project is different. So some are completely grant funded, some we're working with the charging station providers to contribute funds. Some of it's general funds, some of it is through a Charge Ready program, our Cal EVIP. So it was really hard to answer your question. I can,
But it sounds like to get in agreement with Edison, you need Board of Supervisors approval to
Correct.
sign the contract.
yes,
Gotcha. And they need to all vote on whether or not
yes.
we go into a contract. Yes.
And then I tried to provide, for our recent grant applications, we've been gathering cost estimates from charging station providers for level 2 and DC fast chargers. So I tried to provide that information. Again, it varies from site to site depending on how much infrastructure needs to be put in. And there's, as it's described in here, there's kind of 2 portions. One is up to the SCE meter, and then from the SCE meter to the stub outs. So SCE has typically taken care of the infrastructure up to their meter, and then depending on what program or grant we're part of, the county may have to pay from the meter to the stub out. I've learned a lot about construction this year.
Very good.
And then we just included in case, I think there might be a discussion coming up in September, but here are some potential electrification, transportation related initiatives that the VCCEC could be interested in talking about: EV access and adoption focused outreach, EV charging infrastructure, focused outreach or technical assistance. Efforts could be focused on installing public charging infrastructure, our workforce development. These are all things that we're currently working on in our EV blueprint. And that's through the Ventura County Regional Energy Alliance. But if the VCCEC wanted to explore additional policies or programs, they could talk about it.
Yeah,
So is that an invitation to do that?
It's up to you all.
yeah. So we can put that as part of the last item that we take care of for any future agenda items. All right. Anything else, Heather?
I threw a lot of information at you. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. If not, I can always follow up with additional information.
Yeah. So any questions from the council here for this portion? Anyone online that would like to either ask a question or make a comment? All right, seeing none online and none in the audience here. Thank you very much. So let's move on to item number 9, receiving a presentation on the Ventura County Sustainable Agricultural Practices. So Heather, do you want to introduce the team?
Yes. We have Emily Nye, and she's an agricultural and environmental sustainability specialist with the Ventura County Resource Conservation District, and she will be presenting on sustainable agricultural practices. And she is joined by Ben Faber.
Correct.
From the UC Cooperative Extension. Online is Annemie
Shoulder.
and I'm not sure who she is for.
She's my director,
Oh, okay.
corporate extension.
And then we have Jamie White Ford.
I am also with Ventura County Resource Conservation. I'm the director of that grant. The speaker closer here.
Apologize if the settings got a little off. My file was too large to send a email. So thanks for having us today.
Welcome. Sorry. I think I need to
I think it's good.
share this screen.
Did you want
I kind of want to click the.
Okay, can you do the shares? Yeah. Okay.
You have to-
Now it's not sharing screen.
Oh.
Pass that mouse on.
So it's just the air, you just hit that green arrow.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, the mouse is delayed, so I think I hit.
No,
You
no,
just-
just the
just
green
the-
arrow. Yeah, there you go. That one. And then you choose your
On the
file.
presentation, Yeah.
Mhm.
And now when you do it, you should be able to click on start.
From beginning.
Okay, perfect. Screen sharing.
There you go.
There you go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Nye. I'm the Agricultural and Environmental Sustainability Specialist. I work at the Ventura County Resource Conservation District. So for today, our presentation, we were asked to talk about sustainable agriculture in Ventura County. So I'll first talk about the conservation organizations that are here today, just in our roles in the community, the general agricultural landscape of Ventura County, how the purpose of the Ventura County Council here is the Climate Emergency Council aligns with sustainable agriculture practices, and then some more specific examples on climate smart agriculture. So just to note that I wanted to thank.
Can you please reduce the put mine, just click on minus so we don't. So yeah.
Mouse is slow, right?
It's really slow. Okay,
It's your file size.
it's my files. Okay, there we go. Sorry, it didn't register the first time. So I'd like to thank my boss, Dr. Jamie Whiteford, for coming here with me today, as well as Dr. Ben Faber for representing UC Cooperative Extension. Annemiek is busy off presenting across the world, so thank you for zooming in today as well on this meeting. I think this mouse is gonna be thank you. Am I just, oh. Okay, that's a lot of information, but a little bit about us. I don't know, Ben, do you want to introduce the UC Cooperative Extension? You know,
Well, UC Cooperative Extension is cooperative. It's a partnership with federal government, state government, county government. And we are in every county in the state. We do research and education for the public and grower community. We've been here since 1914. So part of the county government here.
other conservation partners in the community, the RCD regularly works with is the NRCS, which is the US Department of Agriculture group. So it's the Natural Resources Conservation Service. They're a federal organization that helps producers identify conservation practices that they can voluntarily implement on their farms. And they offer cost share opportunities for farmers to voluntarily implement those practices. So we regularly work with them, as well as the Farm Bureau of Ventura County. Specifically, we frequently work with Jody at the Farm Bureau, who manages the Ventura County Agricultural Irrigated Lands Group, VCALG, and they are helping growers comply with state and federal water quality regulations. So a lot of the water quality data that's collected on outputs coming from farms is going to come from that program. And then there's us, the RCD. We're a special district. We work in the Ventura County. We also partner across county lines. We regularly have tri-county cooperations, especially with SLO and Santa Barbara counties. And then, so our strategic priorities aren't just with agriculture. We go beyond that, just so you're aware, but I'll focus on agriculture today. We at the RCD have 26 active grants totaling $13 million that are going out to the community. And we have another 3.5 million about to be executed. And then that's not even including ones we've applied to and are waiting to hear back from. So we have many millions of dollars invested in the community that we're providing services. So just as a recap, all of our conservation organizations are doing different things to help our agricultural community in Ventura County, from policy to education, research, technical support, all the way to financial support. And so there's a lot of overlap, but that allows for a lot of collaboration, which is why it's so essential that we have these strong partnerships. Next, please. And then just to reiterate our cross-county partnerships. Yeah, we have networks all across the state, and RCDs are all across California as well. So we partner everywhere. If you want to know more about those partnership opportunities, we can talk about those at a later time as well. Thanks. Thank you. So for the council, what, at least the gist that I understand, is your priority or purpose is to research and advise on these sub-programs or policies that reduce greenhouse gases and mitigate climate change. So I'm going to focus the agriculture practices that we help farmers implement in those categories that your focus, your purpose is. So climate resilience being that energy consumption, energy efficiency, waste reduction, water conservation. And then with regards to greenhouse gas reduction, the CAP documents mentioned 13% of greenhouse gas emissions are coming from agriculture in the county, primarily coming from fertilization of crops and secondarily coming from the use of farm equipment. So we're going to talk about practices that address those things. Yeah. That unfortunately got a little messy, but agriculture in Ventura County, next please. So frustrating.
It's our mouse and our computer.
Just a little bit about ag in Ventura. We last year had over $2 billion in gross sales in crops in Ventura County. We're number 10 in the nation and the state, and we have over 40,000 individuals working in agriculture. So agriculture is just a huge component of the economy. So just keeping these things in mind as you're moving forward, there's a lot of people involved, and it's so important that our farmers are so invested in these good practices. A little bit more about the crops. Strawberries is number 1. Avocados jumped up to number 2 this year. Lemons, nurseries, celery, those are top crops. We have over 2,000 farms, almost 100,000 irrigated acres, over twice that for rangeland. So we have a lot of potential for carbon sequestration and water recharging, wildlife corridors, energy production on all of these acres in Ventura County.
And nursery stock number 4, those are flowers.
Yeah, flowers, other trees, and
Container plants.
yeah,
Container plants,
yeah,
okay.
landscaping. Thank you. 78% of our farms are going to be under 50 acres. So we have a lot of small farms. Only 25% of our farmers are new, which is great. We have a lot of growth and interest in the industry. And then only 5% of our farms are organic. So that leaves some room, if organic is a priority, that leaves some room for growth. Applying to be organic is a long and can be financially challenging. So that's something that maybe support could be assisted with. And to note, there's only 81% of the farmers have internet access. So that is an accessibility issue.
Maybe you could just expand real quick. What is farm organically?
Organic certification, meaning that you are following the USDA guidelines of organic certification, and you have to go through a long certification process. You have to use the specific kinds of seed and not pesticides and specific type of
Not synthetic.
not synthetic, non-GMO plants and things like that. So it's,
And some of the other constraints are that with testing, if you are next to conventionally farmed parcels, there's drift, and so it can be difficult for people to achieve. I want to point out that this is for certification. There are a lot of farmers who are practicing organic methods and sustainable methods, but they're not going after certification simply because of the arduous path going that way.
is that the main constraint, is just getting that certification, or is there also a cost benefit to not farming organically?
I don't want to speak to that because I'm not a farmer, so I don't know all the specifics that go into it. But I do think that if you do farm organically, you follow the sustainability practices, that you can get a premium, and certainly I think that shows up in the marketplace. So whether or not that offsets some of the other risks, I'm not sure, because you are going to have additional pest issues to deal with. Potentially that can increase your labor costs, so it's tough. UCNR does much more research, I would think, maybe.
Yeah, for every crop, there's a cost and benefit that comes with going organically. And the certification process is arduous. Documentation of what you're doing and what your neighbors are doing. And I'd like to emphasize, again, most of the growers in this county are small farmers. In the parcels, I just saw a 1927 overflight of Ventura County, and we're still all these little farms, and which is a benefit, but it's also a drawback. You know, it's a whole lot easier to be one giant farm in the Central Valley, and everything is done the same way on flat ground. But you know, everything's got to be farmed and customized here, and it's hard to keep track of stuff.
What's really nice to note here as well on this slide is that 92% of the farms are family owned and operated. That's wonderful.
It's a really distinguishing factor. I mean, when you go down to San Diego, there's a lot of small farms, but they're not family owned. They're managed by managers. Whereas here, it's people on the ground are doing it.
That also serves as a constraint, however, because being a small farmer, especially a family farm, you may not have the opportunities to go after grants to help with capital infrastructure improvements. You have to sort of take away from your time actually farming to do some of the more administrative things. And if it's not directly related to sort of, you know, tracking your profits and paying your bills and, you know, selling the product, it can be tough to sort of cut out time for that.
Sorry. It's okay. Just apologize again for the the silly. The next slide is. Okay. Oh. So looking at sustainable agriculture in Ventura County, I want to first look at sustainability, where that's the typically thought of the three-legged stool. You have to have them in equal parts, the social, economic, and environmental, the people, profit, planet, and perpetuity. But we're really focusing on air quality, water quality and quantity, soil, biodiversity, climate resilience, the human health, financial stability, job security. Those are the things that are important to us and all of our organizations. We'll focus in more so on the practices that align with your goals. So what you're looking for is the climate smart agriculture practices. This is a standard term at this point since 2010. Climate smart agriculture has been used. It's in the USDA, US Department of Agriculture, the UCANR, the Cooperative Extension, the Department of Conservation, the California Department of Food and Agriculture. All of those organizations are using this climate smart agriculture terminology. And so those practices are increasing productivity, have the goals of increasing productivity, enhancing resilience, and reducing emissions on farms. And doing those things not by creating new practices, but taking the practices that work well and gearing them towards increasing soil carbon, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and improving our water efficiency. So to implement those climate smart practices, it's really important to have it be feasible financially for the farmers, especially small farmers. potentially equipment wise, there's several practices you'll see that require equipment once or twice a year, and they're very expensive. So having a small farm can't afford to purchase that equipment. So maybe having a equipment rental would be useful. Having technical services from our organizations to help farmers through implementing the process is essential, and having monitoring plans to make sure these practices are working the way they're supposed to be. That's a lot of these are time and financial constraints that farmers don't necessarily have. So that's a place where our organization and others have the opportunity to assist. So all of these climate smart strategies are science-backed. They do show benefits in greenhouse gas reduction and climate mitigation. So that's the only reason I'm showing them to you today. And the good thing is many of our farmers in Ventura County are already implementing these climate smart practices. The early adopters, it's really beneficial for them to get incentives to do so, because it is a financial risk to adopt a totally new practice on their farm, because there's a risk of them getting no return on trying a new practice. So having that financial support is so important. Next. And then also having authentic opinions and being able to hear out from peer to peer, farmer to farmer, to know what practices worked for them, so that they can not just hear from a professional, but from their neighbor, like, hey, I did this, it worked for me. You have the same crop, why don't you try it? Next. And so we'll focus here on USDA has adaptation strategies and approaches for farmers, and they have categorized them into these 7 different groups: soil health, water availability, biological crop stressors, addressing temperature change, extreme events, looking at farm management in the larger landscape, and developing or expanding co-benefits of mitigating climate change. And so I'm going to focus, next please. I'm going to focus on a couple of them, because we could be here for hours.
It would be a seminar, right?
It's exciting. It's really good stuff, actually. Next, please. So for the healthy soils practices, and then all these things, our organizations are already implementing these in farms in Ventura County. There's always room to grow, but just so you know, these are already happening. So for healthy soils, we want to manage our sediment. We want to keep that topsoil on the farm. So to do that, we want to reduce irrigation runoff. Your runoff will take the topsoil with it. So we want to reduce our overwatering. Farmers are doing a really good job of implementing drip and micro sprinklers in the county to reduce and target the watering to where it needs to be, and not just flood irrigation. And by also reducing our overwatering, we oh my gosh, excuse me, this is going to be on the next slide, but by reducing our overwatering, we're not leaching water in below the root zone and losing it to the watershed. We're actually keeping it where the plants can use it. And same thing with stormwater management, we're trying to control and keep the water on our property, right? So slow down the flow of water, cover crops. There's a picture on the left in the middle. Filter strips, detention basin, infiltration practices. Those things trap the water and allow it to infiltrate on site instead of rushing off into our local waterways. And then we get those drastic floods that are really carving out our rivers.
So you're saying that in that middle photo here on the left-hand side, that if we have plants in the middle of those tree rows, that it helps mitigate some of that?
Yeah, so you're trying to cover, you don't want any bare soil. When you have bare soil and rain or irrigation hits it, it's breaking up the soil, and then the soil can float away, either wind or in water. And so you're trying to keep it vegetated. It could be mulch as well. So if you're trying to keep bare soil covered with either mulch, which lots of orchards around here are doing, and or cover crops as an example. So in your alleyways of your orchard, you might be able to put in cover crops. That also has a co-benefit of attracting pollinators.
Okay.
Next, please. Yeah, so with water conservation and greenhouse gas reduction, and we do a lot of these practices at the RCD and help farmers implement them. The first thing we want farmers to do is make sure they have good distribution uniformity. That means that each plant, each tree is getting the same amount of water. You're not giving 10 gallons to this plant and 1 gallon to that plant. It should be uniform across the board. That way, you know, if you look at a tree, it's representative of your orchard or your row crops. And as well, because most of the farmers in the county are using fertigation, which is fertilizer that they put into their irrigation lines. And so they directly deliver water and fertilizer to the crops and to the roots where they need it, and not just spread it all over the place. But if you don't have good distribution uniformity, then you're unequally distributing fertilizer as well. So starting with distribution uniformity and then having good irrigation scheduling. So looking at, is the soil wet right now? Yeah, okay, I don't need to water. Is the soil really dry? There's monitoring systems that we can use and we have available for farmers. And we have programs coming up to allow them to look at this. So they can schedule their irrigation to when their plant needs it and not overwater. Next, please. Oh, next. With fertilizer management, we want to do soil testing and leaf analysis and nutrient budgeting for your crop. And you can press one more time, please. The VCALG with the Farm Bureau offers this one pager here to help farmers with their nitrogen management planning. The RCD is able to help with that. If the upcoming, the current draft of the agricultural order, which is the water quality requirements for farms, if it gets passed, the regional board will require all farmers in the county by March of 2025 to have one of these and submit them. So it will require all farmers in the county to be documenting the types of fertilizers they're using and the output of their crops. And there's some calculations that can be a little intimidating, but that's why organizations like ours are here to help with those sorts of things. And there's also other local organizations that can help you with that soil testing and leaf analysis, so farmers know what's the current status of their property and what do they actually have to add. It's very expensive to add fertilizers. They don't want to add more if they don't have to. So we want accurate information on this. So like Fruit Growers Lab is one organization that we have worked with to help farmers manage their fertilizer. The managing of the biological stressors, so the pest management, disease risk management, and the weed and invasive pressure. There's so much to go on through these. This is not my expertise. Ben, I don't know if you want to speak to this. There's a lot of different practices that can be implemented to address those issues that aren't just pesticides.
Much of the research that we do in our office, we have plant pathologists, weed scientists, entomologists, that this is our full-time job, looking at how best to manage new and introduce and old species like diamondback moth has been around. Phil Phillips was a plant pathologist and entomologist in our office 20 years ago, and he was working on diamondback moth, and we're still fighting it. You know, but it's it's an ongoing process.
But there are practices that help and knowledge from our local resources that we're able to help farmers identify these native habitat plantings that they might put in to try and increase beneficial insects to fight off those pests that you're not wanting, or to reduce disease in your crops. Having a genetic diversity of your crops is helpful. To reduce your weeds, you might have cover crops you might plant as well. There's a lot of practices that not only benefit just soil and water and pests, they have multiple uses. So you've seen several of these already. And then, of course, with the greenhouse gas reduction, thinking about your priorities, progress is better than perfection. So incremental progress. We want to reduce greenhouse gases. We can have I mean, there's the potential for electric powered equipment that is challenging, that's expensive. But efficient lighting is totally accessible. The variable frequency drivers, VFDs, that's a regularly installed when updating water pumps now, because it reduces the amount of energy you're pulling to get irrigation throughout your system. And so you're not working at the highest rate the entire time. You can have this enough pressure to irrigate what you need. Solar and wind power generation, there are solar panels. We have several projects at the RCD that have solar on their properties. So that helps them power their water systems. It also helps, they can give back to the grid if they're not using their energy at that time. What's important with solar generation is that we're streamlining the process for farmers being able to connect it back into the system. I think there's a bit of a slowdown in that connection. And then at the RCD, we also offer greenhouse gas assessments and audits based on a current grant that we have. So that's another way farmers can investigate what their property is looking like right now. And how
And are they taking advantage of that?
well, it just opened up in the last 3 weeks. So,
Okay, it just started.
so it just started. We just have our website up and we're starting to make it more publicly known. We have a lot of grants right now in agriculture, probably about 10 in ag alone that we have, that Jamie and I are working on right now.
Question.
Yes.
How are, with such a variety of large and small farms,
Yeah.
how is the greenhouse gas, like, managed from like a county or state level? I mean, I'm sure there's like old tractors and new tractors, and like, is it really just an assessment of what's out there, or there's some?
So our assessment is on a per farm basis. That's what our grant allows us to do. There are opportunities through NRCS and other federal opportunities that allow you to exchange or essentially exchange your old farm equipment if it's a certain age for newer. I don't recall the name of, do you know the name of that project?
I should know it.
If Brooks was here, he'd know.
Maybe NACI, that National Air Quality Initiative or Incentive.
It's like a name, actually, like a person's name.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, and I just
Oh,
remember-
are you thinking of the Carl Moyer program?
Yeah,
So that one's through APCD. So that's one of APCD's programs, along with the Community Air Protection Program and the Farmer Program, which is funding agricultural reduction measures. It's a lot, yeah, but.
Yeah. So there are several programs, but finding the one that meets your needs, like the RCD is focused on individual farms in many of these practices. So in particular, greenhouse gas assessment is on individual basis, not on a countywide. So it's, yeah, plans for an individual farm to improve their greenhouse gas.
Victor used to work for APCD.
Actually, on that specific program.
Oh, nice. So you know a lot more than I do.
I have a question about the plant woody perennials for cover crops with tap roots, and what's an example of that? Is that really happening?
Yeah, so on the bottom picture, it's a hedgerow and windrow or windbreak project on the King and King Ranch in Ventura County. And so they have willows along the edges of their properties, and then they have interplanted between the trees different pollinator plants as well. And so the woody perennials, those trees are holding, it's a carbon sequestration option. So they're holding carbon. They're also reducing the wind and the topsoil blowing off. It's also creating native habitat for birds and other pollinator species. So there's a lot of benefits to those projects, and it does regularly happen. There are several programs, the California Department of Food and Agriculture Healthy Soils Program, HSP, and the CDFA's PHP, which is a pollinator habitat program. Both of those is something a farmer can work with the RCD on, and those are to implement practices. Those such as the hedgerow and woody perennial plantings.
And you say this is in just test phase right now on one farm or?
No, that is an example that's been going on for a couple years on that farm in particular, but if a farm reaches out and they're interested in those practices, then we can work on helping get them an application to implement those practices. There are several farms in Ventura County that do these things already. I just only have one picture because I just have the one side.
It might be something that we ask them to do, like a site visit or something, you know, to see some of these if you want. And that could help.
I think where I'm going with it is, you know, as far as the goal of reducing greenhouse gas and increase this carbon sequestration, is that maybe, you know, one of the recommendations would be is to, whatever, I don't know how you would fund it, but assist these farms and saying, hey, look,
Farmers,
everybody
yeah.
should be doing this, let the county provide you guidance through you guys and funding through Heather.
And maybe another grant.
But it would be a number that we could actually grab, right? Somebody
Sure,
smarter than us
to
can
then
quantify
measure.
this greenhouse gas reduction, which is our goal here.
And just to add a note to that, so most of the projects that Emily is bringing to your attention are funded for maybe 3 years through various funders, typically state. But in this particular case, this image on the bottom of this slide is from a Department of Conservation grant. But we also have California Department of Food and Agriculture grants. Again, most of those grants go for a couple of years, 2 to 3 years. So during that, I mean, our role is primarily to assist with either implementation or technical assistance to farmers. So the challenge with having grants is that they end.
It's away.
Yeah.
And so we can't always continue the same type of grants through the same funding. So having a sort of a steadier revenue that would provide for that long-term planning, because you do have to plan these things and then actually implement it. And then if you want to monitor the benefits, it all takes time. But more importantly, you need consistency. You need consistency to say that this program is going to continue, like the carbon oil program. It's going on forever. But that means people are used to it, they know it works, and they know how to approach it, and so on. It would be great to see that kind of persistence and consistency, because like these perennials, you know, whether you're working with natives or even non-natives, but in this case, native willow, and to go back to your question about deep root plants like Toyon and others that can be companion plantings, not just with willow, but also with oak for like oak restoration efforts. You know, those would all be great to have consistency with. So.
I would assume the cost is upfront in providing the plants, the labor, installing them, and then like there's no maintenance on this sort of, is there, as far as funding goes, like, is there long-term funding that would be required for each farm, or is it mostly upfront to get it going, and then once they're established, it's
well, the establishment period will vary depending on what it is that you're putting in. In this case, we did both relatively modest size plantings like yarrows and milkweed, but we also had larger, more woody plants such as toyon. If for the larger plants, you don't have to worry about maintenance for long term because they're going to beat out weed pressures eventually. But you're gonna lose out to weed pressures if you don't continue to do maintenance. In this case, the small farm that we assisted in this program does have to consistently go back and maintain to keep the weed pressures down. Now they can do that through a number of ways. Mulch is a primary way of doing that. But eventually, there are always weeds that are very persistent. And so maintenance is an issue. But depending on what it is you're planting, it may be a relatively short-term investment in terms of continuing maintenance, or it may be a rather persistent issue.
Thank you.
Okay. Good questions.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you.
And so just closing the gap, how do we make these practices accessible to farmers? The financial, the equipment, the language barrier, and timing, making sure that our information that we disseminate is multilingual. The timing, farmers usually have a pretty short window when they want to get a project done or have a field open to do so. Grants are not as flexible as they need to be to meet the timing that the farmers need at times. So that is a constraint with projects, but that's also an opportunity where we can complement each other on timing, grants, and with other sources of funding. Next, please. Outreach, and you can press one more time, please. Outreach and education. All of our organizations are working on these areas heavily, from online to in-person to print, networking in the larger community. We work with a lot of different local vendors, farmer advocacy groups, just to get the word out about our programs. We always encourage, if you want to share with your neighbor farmer, that'd be great. But what we need the most, I would say the most assistance in, is the accessibility on the farmer's end.
Oh, I have a question. Can you explain what's happening in that photo?
Oh, so this photo, so there's Jamie in the front. We're at a
Same dance, same hat.
so that's Brooks Engelhardt from the NRCS. He's giving a presentation during one of our field days we had in, was it July 1st, July 2nd? June? Oh, wow. Okay, time flies. June 1st, June 2nd. We had about, I think about 60 farmers between 2 days come out to 2 different farms to learn about water conservation, irrigation practices, and soil moisture monitoring. Brooks is in this picture showing, you can't tell, but he's showing you how to tell them the soil moisture by feel and how to identify your type of soil and how wet it is. So you can learn to trust the technology that tells you, like, hey, your soil's wet. You can go out and feel it. Yes, like that's how it's supposed to feel when it's wet. And you can verify that technical information, because sometimes it's a little intimidating just to like put all your trust into technology from the get-go. So being able to, that's in this picture, he's just sharing, here's how you can verify you can trust this information by hand. And then, so our growth strategies for these practices, rolling out to local farms, we're already doing that, but including incentives for the early adopters is always going to be a good promotion to limit the financial burden on those farmers. These partnerships, thank you so much for having us come and talk to you today. It allows us to get the word out about how we can connect on the climate action plan, among other things, in the community. And then we always like to gather feedback from the agricultural and farming community, so that way we can better implement and expand these practices and make it accessible. So if you have farmers saying things to you, please send them our way and we'll help them to the best of our ability.
Wow, that was an excellent presentation.
Yeah, very good.
You know,
You have a question?
I'm sorry.
It's okay. You can press one more time. You're good.
Yeah.
You want to ask your question? Okay.
No, I'll wait till you're done. I'm sorry. I thought you were done.
I'm gonna just recap what I already talked about, so you don't have to say it. But what we talked about, your purpose, the corresponding examples being for energy consumption, allowing for the solar power, water pumps, energy efficiency, updating our irrigation systems. For waste reduction, one of the programs is the SB 1383. So there's a potential for to deliver compost and mulch to farms. And if you could do that for free, even better, because then we can allow more farmers to access that. Water conservation, that's the irrigation evaluations, that's the keeping the ground covered, that's the scheduling your irrigation based on the soil moisture. We've talked about all these things. Reducing our fertilizer, that's making sure our nutrient management plans are done by a certified individual. That's going to become required most likely if the ag order passes. Carbon sequestration, planting, and reducing our farm operation, everything from reducing how many times we run over the property, So reducing our tillage to automating our irrigation, so you don't have to do it by run around by hand. There's so many practices that can be implemented to address your issues. So many of these, if not all of them, are already being done in Ventura County. It's just increasing how many we can bring to the small guys especially.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Amy, wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for the
fabulous.
team being here and those online. Questions from the council members here?
I have maybe a comment. Yeah, great presentation, and for those of us who stared at the greenhouse gas emission pie for Ventura County, agriculture is a significant part of that. And wanting to reduce the county's emissions to meet the state and federal goals is a big challenge. And it's, for me, heartening to see that the ag community is actually working on this. And, I think of farmers. I was a small organic farmer myself until I sold it. But I think of farmers as very independent. We know what we're doing. We've been doing this for 100 years. Don't tell us what to do. A resistance to change. And it's so heartening to see that these things are actually happening. High five.
I would like to say that it's not so much a resistance to change as it is a caution of loss. It's hard to just trust that something is gonna actually work, So I think there's just a caution. But through the education series that Farm Bureau puts out, attendance at our events, et cetera, I think there is a desire to learn more. It just takes time to make sure that it works and see that, again, as Emily pointed out, that peer-to-peer network come into fruition. And then also providing the technical assistance to actually help those farmers implement and use and understand the technology. That was a major point of emphasis for one of the last slides Emily showed, where Brooks was with NRCS was out in the field. That whole project was about demonstrating to farmers how technologies work, so that they can then move slowly and cautiously towards adoption. It just takes time.
There's also a major change is always happening. There's new people coming into the field. The people I worked with 25, 30 years ago have been replaced by their grandchildren. And they've got all kinds of new ideas, and there's new technologies, and there's new plants, there's new opportunities and new challenges. And it's like people have to stay loose in order to stay in business. So there's a lot of change that we don't always see too.
Now, when you first introduced and talked about, the number of farms and all of that, what's the percentage of the farms that actually exist within the unincorporated areas of Ventura County? I would think that it would be extremely high.
The percent of the farms in the unincorporated area, well, yeah, it's the majority.
For the
We work with, the RCD works with the unincorporated portions of Ventura County. And the statistics on the farms came from the VCAL, the Farm Bureaus. They send out surveys to all the farmers in the county. And about 95% of the farmers of the irrigated land farmers are a part of the membership of VCALG. So the response rate is really good, and the connection to the farmers is really important. So I'd say the majority of what was posted there is within the unincorporated portions of the county. Urban ag is not as popular.
Yeah. Okay. So do you have a question?
Not a question, but a favor. I mean, I guess you know what this board's kind of goal is, right? Is to kind of supplement the county's already created climate action plan. So I guess I would politely task you or ask you if you got 4 or 5 recommendations that that farmers could incorporate, that the county could assist with financially, technically, or what have you. If you could send those to us so that we could kind of internally reconcile? Are they already being sort of planned in the long-term planning for this action plan? And if not, then that's where kind of we would come into play and say, cool, thank you for your ideas. We're gonna take credit for it, send it on to the board of supervisors and see if we can't get it to be added to the county's long-term action plan. But you guys are the experts, right? So if you got some of those ideas through Heather, send it our way so that we can kind of chew on it and see if we can assist you guys in local farming to make it happen.
Taking that one step further, I think if it can be identified as that we have a best practice going on with one farm that has done several of those items, then we can showcase that this is what is going on for GHG reduction and carbon sequestration. And so that then shows that it's not only just theory and our plans and goals, it's then implementation of what it looks like in the field, so to speak. So that would be good. Mhm. Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Said.
Great job with the presentation. And I mean, I just want to echo what Eric said. I learned so much, first of all, about sedimentation management and irrigation management, fertilizer management. It's clear that farmers have done a great job with water conservation because of the financial benefit, right? If you use too much water, the penalties, right? So that was clear to me. Obviously, when it comes to GHG and greenhouse emission, that's not that much, and you guys are doing a great job. I just want to echo what Eric said, and also what Sylvia said, basically about having one example as kind of example. I wouldn't mind a field trip, actually. I would love to even just going to one of those places and just seeing, especially the one that's doing a great job of implementing this carbon sequestration and all that stuff. So, because I really don't know much about ag, thank you for teaching me.
It was a lot to put on your plate, but there's so much to it. I didn't want to take anything.
Yeah.
Someone did email me, so can we focus in? I was like, well, there's just a lot of interest.
Can I
There's a
ask
lot.
if we can share the presentation somewhere like this, the slides? Is that a possibility? I mean, I think there was a lot of useful information. I was taking notes, but clearly
Yeah.
I didn't do other stuff.
Yeah, it's just a large file, which is why I
Yeah,
had
can
trouble
you send
emailing
a
it.
smaller PDF file? I mean, that's not.
I will try to condense it, and if not,
We can reduce the
It'll just sit
resolution.
on their website.
it'll be on our
It'd be
website.
nice to have that.
Mhm.
Thank you.
It could possibly even be that it's a focus of an upcoming newsletter or something, just talking about just other opportunities that we have throughout the county to tackle some of these issues. And it would be working with, these departments.
Yeah, if you ever want to share information, get it out. We mostly email to employees as well as our partner agencies, but everyone has newsletters and stuff that are that go out to the public. And so we're happy to share information or offer letters of support for grants or anything that we can do to help.
Yeah, especially if the ag community represents $2 billion in gross sales, that's key, Yeah,
And
you
it's-
keep things moving and keep food on the table for many people.
And just on that note, agriculture is a substantial part of our economy, as Emily stated, and that's also one of the reasons why there is such a greenhouse gas element embedded within it, because it's just a large industry. There's a lot of parts to that
Yeah.
overall sector.
Even employment. Yep, absolutely. We really appreciate you all coming out today. We do have a couple of, we do have one hand, and I think there were a couple of folks that provided some chat. So let's go first to Shelley Sussman. Go ahead. This is
Hi, I'm trying to start my video. It's not working for whatever reason, or maybe now it is. Anyway, I am a manager in the planning division here at the county, and I really enjoyed your presentation. Emily, thank you so much. It raised a couple of questions for me, none of which are related to one another. And one of which is directed to Morel, which was, I like to see the picture of the trees that you showed in one of your last slides. And I'm wondering, Morel, if you're connected to the NRCS for the tree count program. And are we capturing the trees that are planted as part of the programs that the NRCS is working with farmers to implement? That was one comment. The other comment is about metrics, and I'm wondering if you, staff at NRCS, has figured out an approach for capturing greenhouse gas emission reductions that come from the programs that you're working to implement. Have you guys thought about ways to track that progress, or any potential reductions? So that's one question. And then my last question is, our focus in planning is often land use and zoning codes and so forth. And we're always interested in making sure that a minimal amount of ag land is converted for other uses. So I was really interested to see the solar panels laid out adjacent to what looked like kind of an agricultural water impoundment. And my question is sort of esoteric, which is, typically, are those enclosures large enough for a large size ag business to include solar panels? Like, solar is allowed, actually, is an allowed use on ag land per our zoning code. But again, our emphasis is minimizing the removal of ag. But if it can be done in a way that, places the solar panels on land that is not otherwise being used for agricultural production because it's adjacent to, your ag impoundment or, the water feature, are they typically large enough to include space for solar?
So the solar picture that you saw was next to a water retention basin. It's a farm in Somas. It's about 126 acres, I think was the amount. And that project was funded through CDFA, a SWEEP program. And so that program is to reduce water use and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. That farmer implemented the solar panels as a part of that.
Was it for their water pump?
It's for their water pump.
Okay.
But also, when they're not using it, it has the potential to push energy back to the grid.
Add energy.
At the end, as far as I'm aware, they're at the end of the line. So it's extra important for them to be able to have that resilience of being able to take offline if there's a fire in the area, then they can pump water to places that they need it as well. So there's a lot of benefits with that farm. They chose to put the panels on the flat area surrounding their water retention because it was an available space. They didn't have to reduce their crops, and it was in a fenced-in area as well. There are several buildings on farms that can be a space, especially for small farmers that are not able to take land out of production, or they don't want the shade covering their production. They can put panels on buildings as well and use that for agricultural purposes. Jamie, I didn't know if you wanted to comment on solar on ag in the county.
Hi, Shelley. I don't know. I don't want to twist like this, so I'm afraid I'm going to speak kind of oddly. Yes, as Emily pointed out, there in this particular at this particular ranch, there was a reservoir, and so there was room around the reservoir. We actually had a conversation where they had thought about covering the reservoir with the solar panels to decrease sort of evaporative losses, but it was just cost prohibitive, so they didn't pursue that way. As Emily pointed out, this is actually one of two parcels that this particular landowner had funded through SWEEP for water use efficiency and energy use efficiency projects. The other site also had solar panels installed, and these were actually put onto buildings. Originally, they were going to be freestanding, and then somebody made the observation that they could just put it on a building and it would be even better. And so they did that. The other thing I would also mention is that outside of private landowners, and you probably already thought about this, but there are those organizations that serve the ag industry, such as mutual water districts. They're shareholder owned, and there could be room for solar panels to be put on their land. It's not in production, but it does serve agricultural production purposes. And then things like packing houses. For example, Ventura has a packing house in Santa Paula, and they've got a solar panel field, and they even had a graze with sheep, I think it was last time I was out there.
Yes.
So there's lots of these type of infrastructure projects to be done either on ag land or those that are related to ag production. And one of the things I do want to point out before I forget it, a lot of times these are rural communities, that was already pointed out. So solar is just another resiliency factor, not just in terms of reducing greenhouse. So it could add resilience to those rural communities' power as well. So there's multiple reasons to be looking at solar as a potential project in these areas. And Shelley, you had asked about tree tracking. We actually have worked with Muriel on a number of different projects in the past to submit grants. So we already have that communication going on, and she's worked with other members of the RCD team to go after projects to put in trees in urban landscapes. So even though we normally focus on rural communities, we can work in urban areas. We just have to have an agreement with the cities. So we don't necessarily provide all the information about all the projects and the plantings that we do, but we're certainly willing to share that. And then you asked about tracking. Obviously, there are a lot of different metrics we could use. Tree counting would be one of them. One of the things that we commonly report back to our funders is soil organic matter increases with all of our healthy soils programs, for example. And then also, again, all of the stuff that we do are voluntary measures. These are practices that the landowners are voluntarily implementing, but they do share information related to metrics because we are bound to report those back to the state to justify state monies being spent on this project. So, we do have access to that type of information. And then specifically related to greenhouse gases, I do want to point out that while we typically focus strictly on implementation, we actually do work with partners, UCANR particularly, and Department of Extension staff on research projects. We concluded a couple of years ago a greenhouse gas study where we used a portable greenhouse gas emission analyzer to be able to look at CO2 emissions, methane emissions, and nitrous oxide emissions from the implementation of mulch and compost practices on a lemon orchard. So we do have the capacity to do that, but being able to track those types of emissions at the level needed is, as you might imagine, quite expensive. But yes, we are adept at doing all of those things, funding permitted.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for that.
Yeah,
You're
thanks.
welcome.
And anyone else online that would like to ask a question? I did notice that we had a few items in the chat. Do you know if there were any questions that we had earlier?
They were to make sure that they were able to see the presentation in here clearly.
Okay, very
Those
good.
were, responded to.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you. Well, thank you so much for carving out this time for putting together a wonderful presentation. And we'll continue the discussion of how we can work together with you folks. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
it's a pride.
It's all right.
But
There's a lot of good things to do.
Yes,
Yeah, and
absolutely.
keep up the good work.
Yeah, Thanks for being our ambassadors out there. So
Yeah, absolutely.
great connection and great collaboration, and it shows. Thank you. All right, so let's move on to item number 10, which is council member comments and future agenda items. So any comments from anyone here?
I think for me, a future agenda item, I'd like to kind of see what our sustainability division or the counties, as far as there's a huge, it sounds like we've got a great plan in place for electric vehicles and charging stations, and how do we supplement that additional electrical generation? Right now, I think like half the state is still gas powered electrical generation. So, I mean, I think to Shelley's point, like solar panels, like, what is the county's current plan for, wind and solar and anything other renewable for electrical generation? Get an idea of where we're at today and where we're going with what's the current plan? I thought that'd be a good presentation.
Okay, all right. Councilmember Said?
Yeah, one thing I wanted to find out, I mean, I know we talked a lot about solar. Is wind power something not sustainable in Ventura County? You don't get enough winds or something? What is why I haven't seen much, actually, when you go towards north, you see a lot of these windmills, like fans all over. Why not here? I was just curious. It's,
I think the answer is the potential wind here is just not there compared to places like the road to Palm Springs or up
Las
north.
Vegas.
It's just not that windy here, but there is a lot of sunshine.
I'm gonna just butt in here for a moment.
Yes, go ahead.
Planning division is working on an energy assessment that's looking at wind, solar, and battery storage. We actually are anticipating going to the board with a study on September 26th.
Great.
So that information should be forthcoming in a board letter. And Mr. White is correct. At least our study shows that there really are very, very limited locations in the county of Ventura where the wind is strong enough and sustained for long enough periods to make it economically viable.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? No? Yes, Vice Chair.
On things for the next agenda, I think it would be good to revisit what we did, I think 2 meetings ago. VCCEC voted to recommend to the Board of Supervisors that the county hire a technical person to work on coming up with greenhouse gas emission reduction policies and programs. And we did that, but it didn't really go anywhere. And it was suggested that we need to do it again in a different time frame. Maybe that time frame is next month, and do we need maybe a particular document to look at and endorse to make sure that that message gets to the board and they hopefully act on it.
So you're talking about the item that was also attached to like a budget request, I think.
I can, sorry to
Yeah, go
speak to
ahead.
that, as far as at least for the climate pollution reduction grants, with the consultant that we're looking at, or the proposals that we're reviewing, that was in our RFIs to also have the consultant assist us with coming up, at least for the regional plan, with some measures for greenhouse gas reduction. So it's not necessarily a staff person in the sustainability division, but these efforts should help us get that result.
Okay. Well, let's talk about it again.
And I'll talk to Alejandra about the process.
Okay, yeah. Process that we need to follow.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, anything else? No, all right. Councilmember Rostro, we understand it's your last meeting, so. Yeah.
Well, I really enjoyed my time here. I really enjoyed your presentation. I took a picture of your contact. Hopefully we can connect soon. Yeah, so I have some questions, but I can ask you via email. Another thing that and then I spoke about was a potential guest speaker about Ormond Beach plant and the environmental justice aspects of Ventura County. So that could be a potential meeting. I know the guest speaker expressed interest, so unfortunately I won't be here for that meeting, but I could join in as
As a member of the
as a member
public.
of the public. So yeah, thank you for the presentation. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for your service on this commission or council, and we wish you all the best of luck
Thank you.
in your future. Yeah, thank you. So one of the items I had is just circling the wagon back around to see if we wanted to create some technical advisory groups where we could focus in on certain areas that were identified a couple of years ago. We kind of sorted everything and put them into buckets, so to speak, so that we could work in smaller groups in those buckets to then either make recommendations for this council or suggest presentations or, suggest that we get more information on those areas and what they're accomplishing and what their goals are. So bringing that back for consideration in the future. All right. Well, with that, then I don't think we have anything else. Anything from the community, public comment on this item number 10. Yeah, all right. Anyone here in the general public in the audience? All right, so then our next meeting is set for, this is when we move to a Monday, not a Tuesday. So it's Monday, September the 18th at noon here in the same place at the Hall of Administration, as well as then the hybrid option available for the general public to join us here. And we will then adjourn at 10 minutes to 2. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.